And I kind of thought, oh, this must be, well, what is this? And so I opened the drawer and I see this book. I see the Plantation Day book from Barbados, 1722. And I was really intrigued about the book. I didn't know what it was. And the interpretation that was there said that it belonged to William Holburne's great-grandfather, who owned plantations in Barbados. It didn't tell you anything about the book itself. So when we had a look at the book, books like this would have contained names of enslaved people on the plantation, not just produce coming in and out. So, I mean, they were accounting tools. They were used by plantation owners to record transactions of sales. And those sales were not just products, they involved people. The most intriguing thing I think about our book is that pages have been cut out, which is really odd and surprising, and, you know, raises so many questions, like, why did this happen? But then at the same time, there is a single page left that has writing on. That's just cocoa, candles and beef are the transactions left in the book. There's no names and there's no explanation, obviously, for why that's happened.
The book didn't make me feel good. It didn't. It kind of, the first thing I looked at, I was very drawn to it. I was drawn to the fact that the missing pages and just the lack of information, the crucial information that I would have loved to seen in that book is not there. It gets taken out. There's so many things that I'm thinking about when I look at that book, and it's just powerful. And the people that are holding that book, you know, what that book represents and what that represents to me now. I don't know, weird feelings.
I was very surprised. There was definitely a lot of mixed feelings going on there. But a lot of that was, I didn't know how I felt about it, to be honest.
I felt really mixed emotions, and I did feel angry that this has just come about now, because this exhibition should have been here for years. That book's been around for years, so why has the exhibition not been here for years? I don't think I was prepared for how much it would hit me. It's a lot. It hits you really hard, you know.
One of the things that had to be included was the Holburne family's history. And that was obviously inspired by the book and the fact that it is from the family and that there were links to plantations in Barbados. And then the deeper I looked, the more I found that they were connected to Antigua, they were connected to Jamaica as well. And the display does sort of show how the Holburne Museum and their family were connected to the slave trade.
Whenever slavery gets mentioned in all sources, either, you know, Bristol, the transatlantic trades, they only go on the basis of stuff, you know, what's traded, that's all. Whereas they never show the brutality or the in-depth details about what's going on. Because in my eyes, Bath had nothing to do with slavery, just Bristol in this country, just because it's on the edge.
When you think about Bath, you think about big, expensive Georgian houses. You don't really know about the history. So when I see exhibitions like this, it just makes me smile, like knowing and learning new things.
It gives you an insight into the history of Bath in general, how we got to one point at the expense of a certain people in order for the majority to rise, and then what happened to that minority that got affected negatively.
Growing up, I think the slave trade was very much so brushed over for me. When it was taught, I'd hear about it briefly mentioned in Black History Month. I was unaware of the scale that had gone on in Bath, and I think that would have made me see my city that I grew up in so differently.
There's a current interest, I suppose, in looking at colonial legacies. So it does bring the Holburne into those discussions. In terms of the book itself, after being in that drawer for, I think, at least 10 years, I thought, well, it deserves its own case. It's got to have its own case.
I was really moved by the way that it kind of starts off with these objective facts, and you see the kind of traditionally told history, and then it moves towards a more emotional centre, and the way that that Plantation book is framed I thought was really appropriate and really gave weight to and gave the appropriate gravity to like what was inside that book, which speaks for itself.
I describe it as a way of walking in a black person's shoes. You know, describing the background of a black person and minorities, especially the Indians, even after we were abolished. It really shows you just the problems that occurred in our empire and what people did just to get wealth.
The idea sort of remained of using the display in some way to also speak for the missing pages. And so what we've done is collaborated with Barbados Museum to reproduce some names of enslaved people on the plinth. And that is a huge deal, I think, because it symbolises remembrance.
I think it was really interesting seeing how she dealt with the challenge of seeing these names and the reality that there are people involved in this history, and that it's really difficult to harmonise ideas that slavery has these big numbers.
Museums can often take a very dispassionate view, and I don't think that's always the right approach, because it's not a dispassionate subject. It means a lot to people, and it has a lot of emotion behind it. There's a lot of grief and pain there, and it's important to acknowledge that as well. They weren't just things that happened, they were things that happened to people.
The last two panels of the display engage with social history aspects, black and white individuals and mixed race individuals actually. And those individuals are from Georgian and Victorian times, and they were either anti-slavery campaigners or demonstrated a form of black agency. And sort of having that in the room that talks about Georgian elegance and splendour and luxury, it's the elephant in the room that it deserves its own sort of spot.
I did not know of any of those names prior to today. It was really interesting reading all of their stories as well. It was nice that there's bits about just kind of who they are outside of their racial activism as well. I think that's a really just nice little touch, kind of makes them a bit more whole. It's, this isn't just a person who did a thing for activism. This is a real person who had a life outside of this one particular topic.
There is a great history of defiance of the status quo and of established laws and social norms, and it's fantastic to see so many feminist individuals, people of colour, all working hard against an institution that does not want them around. And it's fantastic that they got off the ground and did these things. It's stunning to realise that a lot of these people passed away only just before my father was born, how recent these things are, and how hard they would have had to work to get what they did done.
I can only hope that that display will impact other people as much as it has impacted me, and I don't mean just members of the BAME Society, I mean white people as well. I think that people need to realise that everyone's part of the same history. It's not black history and white history, it's one history.
I'm very proud and excited that this is a permanent display because it's something that can be engaged with over a long period of time. It's not going to go away, and it shouldn't go away because the legacy of colonialism hasn't gone away, it's here.
The exhibition is so important because after looking at it, it changes kind of your whole perception of the entire museum.
It's a very heavy subject matter, and I can't possibly know how these people felt, and it does make me feel at least a little hopeful that, you know, there was people back in those days who knew it was wrong and campaigned to end slavery.
It makes me really happy because lots of people don't know, and it's just really good to learn and understand that that is the history of Bath.
I think it wouldn't have been right if it was only for like a few weeks or whatever. But if it's down there permanently, I think it's definitely a lot better, so people know it's there.
I think it's very important because since I didn't know much, it kind of shows that we need this kinds of exhibitions to just give us like an insight of what actually happened.
This is an admittedly fantastic baby step, but this is a baby step. We've still got huge amounts of systematic racism going on right now, and it's a long way to go before we make reparations for all the people that we've hurt in creating our nation as we have it now.
It's important to show younger people, these people that fought against what's happening. I'd say bringing museums and expeditions across the country and across the world really shows people of different minorities and cultures that bullying someone else's minority or anyone else's culture and religion is completely wrong.